Hello, everyone. Justin Halverson here. Got a great episode for you this week. I sat down with Leah Schmid of Wipfli Financial Advisors. Leah has her bachelor's in English and Spanish, as well as a master's of accountancy and taxation from the University of Wisconsin Madison. She is additionally a CPA and CFP for Wipfli Financial Advisors, as well as being on the campus recruitment team. So, great conversation. We spoke about Wipfli as a firm and what it looks like for younger advisors and entry-level advisors when they join, as well as what Leah looks for when she's on college campuses hiring college students. Great conversation. Hope you guys enjoy it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the msuwma podcast. We are here today with Leah Schmid. Leah, thank you for joining us.
It is my pleasure, Justin, as always.
Yeah, well, we're really excited to talk to you today. So what we're trying to figure out here is we're trying to help students in our program understand the different careers in financial planning and wealth management. So to kick things off, I guess what I want to ask is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your pathway to becoming a financial advisor?
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm happy to. I think this might be the case for a lot of financial advisors, but I found this path actually a little bit by accident. My background is in tax accounting, although I've never been a tax accountant. So I went to the UW Madison School of Business to get my master's degree in accountancy with a specialization in taxation. And I had done an internship with Deloitte. They have a practice in Chicago that focuses on international tax structuring, which normal people would find boring or worse. And I found fascinating. So I was lucky enough to get that internship, and it was a really great learning experience for me. But what I took away from that internship more than anything was that I really wanted to work with people. International tax structuring is something that you do for corporations, very, very large corporations. And while I found it challenging, I really missed working with individuals, and I really wanted to know that I was making an impact on someone's life. So when I went back for my final year of my master's degree, I took a capstone course in financial planning at my school. We have a CFP qualified capstone course, and I had done that simply because I found it really interesting, and I liked the ability to understand my own finances as well as help other people I know with theirs. And as a result of that, I ended up with interviewing for an internship with my firm, with Wipfli Financial, assuming that I would be taking a summer internship while I studied to sit my CPA exams. And it ended up being a full-time job offer. And my coworker, Ryan McGuire, talked me into taking it, even though that was never my intention. So I kind of stumbled into it. But after about a year, I realized that this was exactly the career that I was looking for.
That's so cool to hear. You were mentioning people. So was there any like that capstone class? What about it that really captured you? What classes were they?
Yeah, so the capstone course is actually at the time that I took it, it was a 2-semester long course. And our class met once a week, but the classes were 2 hours long, I want to say. I've been in my career for 5 years now, so it's all slightly fuzzy. And the capstone course at Madison now has changed a little bit. But we would have guest speakers come in every week. Every week we would focus on one specific area of financial planning. So it would be, let's say, insurance and risk management. And we would have somebody come in who was a specialist in insurance and risk management. And they would talk about the different types of solutions and problems that one can run into in that specific area of practice. And, we had somebody come in who was an expert in individual tax, and they would give us a background on what they do and how they help clients. And same thing with estates and trusts, 529s, like every aspect of a financial plan you can think of, we cover that in the course of one semester. And in the first semester, those courses all of those topics get condensed into one final financial plan deliverable. You have a sort of a sample client, and you put together a plan using all of this information about their own life. The second semester, you do it for an actual person, a real live person that knows you and is going to let you do this. So it was a really good experience. And I think that was the moment where I realized that I really liked financial planning because of the aspect of it always changing. So there's always something to learn, and there's always some new avenue to pursue. So that's what our capstone is like. And that was the class that made me interested in at least pursuing an internship. It wasn't until my coworker Ryan told me that I should do it full time that I actually ever considered doing it as a career.
I see. It's funny, our program, I'm geared up to take the capstone here next semester. So the way it is at Michigan State is we all take it like going into the senior year, the last semester of our senior year as undergrads. So I know I'm really excited about it. Professor Schiestel is the one who teaches it. And it's a lot like what you described, the sample financial plan. I don't think we're going to be allowed to go out and advise real clients yet, but it sounds like the same thing.
Well, technically my client was my dad, but we couldn't tell anybody that because of client confidentiality rules. So and the person who was advising us, the person who advises a capstone is a CFP. So under the rules of the CFP, technically it's a gray area, but
that's so interesting.
They know, as far as I know, they no longer have that component. It's now a 1 semester long class instead of a 2 semester long class. But I think it was more interesting for me to work with live client data than it was for me to work with sample data personally. But it was also my dad, so obviously.
Yeah. Well, you could also say the risk is higher there, right? Maybe some might say that.
Yeah, that's true. It was terrifying as well.
Can't disappoint Dad.
No.
Yeah. So, you were mentioning your firm, Wipfli Financial Advisors, and like how you never really pictured yourself being there. So, can you give us a little background on the firm and what drew you to it once you kind of decided you wanted to stay there?
Yeah. So our firm was founded in 1999. It is an RIA, as I guess our name doesn't say that, but we're an RIA. We're not a broker dealer or some other hybrid form. So we work with families, individuals, and business owners. And one of the things that is a little bit unique about Wipfli Financial Advisors versus some other RIAs is that we're a CPA affiliated RIA. As I had mentioned, my background is in tax. And so it was a really good fit for me in particular because I do have a CPA. So one of the value propositions that our firm has is that we're able to work really closely with our CPA colleagues to do really integrated tax and financial planning. It's very difficult to make financial plan decisions that don't have tax ramifications, and it's very difficult to make tax decisions that don't have financial ramifications. So having both sides of that equation in the conversation at the same time is very, very important. So that was what initially drew me to Wipfli, because I'd actually interviewed for a position with Wipfli LLP as a CPA. And the managing partner of the Madison office, which is where I sit, Madison, Wisconsin, she apologized to me after the interview because she had realized at that point that they had read the brief wrong and that they did not have an open position in Madison. So it's something that she and I joke about still because I work with her very closely now. But that was what initially drew me to the firm. Was I had actually interviewed with the CPA affiliate, and I really wanted to work with a middle market CPA firm. That's where all of the business owners are. That's where all of the individuals and families are. There's not, in the accounting world, there's four big companies called the Big Four: Deloitte, PwC, EY, and then the other one is KPMG. I shouldn't leave them out. They hate it when they get left out. I did not want to work in the Big Four because they don't work with individuals. So I had been focusing my career search in what's called the middle market of accounting. And it just so happened that Wipfli also had this affiliate financial advisory firm. At that time, they were called Wipfli Humans. But so I had basically applied for this internship because it was affiliated with a CPA firm that I was interested in. And the more I learned about the firm, the more I really liked what they did. We have an investment philosophy that makes a lot of sense to me, and I think works well for retirement savers specifically. So that I found very appealing. I wanted to work with people who I knew, not necessarily just, my friends and family, but people from my community, people who aren't necessarily just ultra wealthy. So that was very appealing to me. And then when I had met my team, I work with a team of very unique individuals, and that's what finally made my decision. And that's why I've stayed with my firm. I think a lot of firms say, we put our people first, or we're a very employee-centric organization. But I just had coffee with our CEO yesterday because he wanted my feedback on how things were going and whether or not there was anything within Wipfli Financial that I had expected that I had not, basically if I had any unmet needs as an employee. And that's the type of firm that Wipfli is. That's the type of firm that Wipfli Financial is. And I think that is hugely important in an industry like this, because our jobs can be very stressful. And sometimes we run into clients who are not very nice. And this is a firm that I saw, they put their employees first, and they continue to do that. So that's why I've stayed for as long as I have.
That's so awesome to hear. Meeting with the CEO. How many people can say that they've had the opportunity to do that? Not too many, I bet.
Yeah. Well, and he used to be a vice president at, I think he was a VP at Dimensional Fund Advisors, DFA. So he came from a very big, prestigious job and then became our CEO. And he's the most down to earth and great guy I know. I was thrilled when he became our CEO. And how many people can say that? I'm a rank and file employee, and I was very excited that he became our CEO. So
that is very cool. I know. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that. So, do you mind talking about the team structure then over there? Like, what does that look like? Is it a team of 5 people, 10 people? And then how big is Wipfli Financial Advisors as a whole? Is it like 100 people work there, 1,000 people work there? How big are you guys?
Yep. So Wipfli Financial is a firm of a little bit under 100. I think we're at about 90 or 91 employees right now. Our teams are built on a office by office basis. So we have our Madison team is currently a team of 4, but our intern will be starting full time in January. So he will be our 5th, and we're very excited about that. Each one of the Wipfli offices, each one of the WFA offices is staffed a little bit differently depending on client profile and the size of the market. But the structure is pretty much the same in every office. We have a principal who is in charge of the office. They are what we would term the boss, but most of them don't think of themselves that way. I know my principal doesn't. And then beneath the principals, we have senior financial advisors. Usually there is 1 or 2 in every office. In some of our bigger offices, there's more than that. But senior financial advisor is the level that you achieve right before you are principal. And then beneath the senior financial advisors is where I sit. I'm a financial advisor in FA. And then beneath that is our associates. And we don't have an incredibly hierarchical structure. So for example, the associates in WFA don't report to the principal. They report to the FAs or the SFAs. And each one of our associates or interns has a coach. So for example, I am the coach for my intern, Josh. And when Josh becomes full-time, I will continue to be his coach. And so we have those one-on-one relationships throughout our firm, throughout every team. My coach is the principal in my office, not the SFA, because the SFA actually, Ryan, he actually has about 2 years of seniority on me. So he coaches me or mentors me more informally, but I actually report to the principal. His name is Dean. So that's how our hierarchy works. There are other teams in our firm aside from what we would term our front stage team. I just described what our advisor structure is like, but then we also have, for example, our ops team. If there is someone in this program who's really interested in finance, but is not very interested in working directly with clients, operations might be the place to be. That's where our trading desk sits. That's where all of our systems are. So we use Tamarack, for example, for reporting. Our operations team runs that whole system. We also have a client service team, which is a dedicated group of professionals who help with all of the logistics and sort of back office work that comes with running an advisory firm. And then we also have executive team. We have an investments team, which rolls up into our investment committee. And then I think, and then we have retirement plan services, which technically is a front stage team. So we have two different service lines. We have a service line that works with high net worth families, individuals, and business owners. And then we have a service line that works with retirement plans, administering and building 401ks and working directly with those 401k participants to help them sort of make a plan for themselves and invest for retirement.
That's fascinating. Would you consider that maybe like the institutional advising, sort of something along those lines?
I would say that RPS is the closest thing that we have to institutional advising. Okay. Institutional could also include things like trust services, which we don't currently offer. It's something that we've considered, but there are some legal complications with setting up a trust service company. And depending on what your business model is, it might not even make sense. So, but yep, that would also fall under institutional, and retirement plan services is usually the largest single chunk of institutional.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, with the trust, you got to get the attorneys involved, and who wants to do that, right? So,
well, I would also say that this is something that you guys will learn as you get into practice, but attorneys also tend to be really good referral sources. So if you think about it from a business perspective, if you have a trust services department, then you have created sort of a barrier between yourself and any attorneys in that space who might refer business to you. So there's some nuance inside of there that really impacts the business decision. As I continue to get more experience in my career, one of the things that I find really fascinating and interesting is how our business works. And that goes outside of the normal scope of my duties, which are really focusing on taking care of our clients and our team.
Yeah. I'm picking on the attorneys. My brother's in law school. My mom's a paralegal, so I have to do it. I'm the oddball.
My boss is actually a JD. So okay. He has an estate planning background, and we always make fun of him because he went to law school to become an attorney, and then he quit being an attorney after, I think it was 13 or 15 years. And we always joke that even though he quit being an attorney, that will follow him forever. Like, you don't get to stop being an attorney.
Yeah.
Even when you stop being an attorney.
So I think we were talking before, we had Barry Ritholtz on our podcast, and Barry Ritholtz went to law school, and he talked about his experiences in law school when he was on the show with Costa. And it was fascinating because he talked about how it helped him think in a totally different manner than what business school would teach you. It just teaches you to think differently. And he says, yeah, that's something he's carried with him the rest of his life. And yeah, that's a very powerful thing. So, yeah, I'm curious. We're getting in the weeds here. But now, can you tell us a little bit about maybe like what the entry-level role looks like on your team? So you were talking about your intern, Josh. So what does Josh do maybe on a day-to-day basis? And what is he going to be doing when he starts full-time?
Oh, Josh. So what our interns do is exactly what our associates do. So this is a little bit different maybe than some other internship programs, but Wipfli Financial views our internship program as essentially a pipeline to feed our associate roles, and we expect our interns to essentially be doing the role of an associate. So that means that they're going to be doing things like preparing the senior advisors for meetings. So there's a whole process that we go through to make sure all of the I's are dotted and all of the T's are crossed in order to prepare us for a meeting. The associates and interns are the ones that actually do the work to get that all put together. So they'll also be directly involved in a lot of those meetings. So we believe it's very, very important for our interns and associates, even our interns, to be directly involved in client meetings as soon as we can get them into a client meeting. The reason for that is because you can learn anything, almost anything from the internet or a book, but in reality, you're not really going to have a lot of technical competence or really great skill as an advisor unless you build soft skills. You need to know the people. You need to know how to interact with people and how different people actually operate. So you need to learn the client base. So we will have an intern or an associate in a client meeting. I think the earliest we've had one in my office in a client meeting is in the first week of their internship.
Wow.
And I will say that we don't expect our interns to be presenting a bunch of material in these meetings, but we do ask them to introduce themselves, to, learn a little bit about the client, make some small talk, and, make a little bit of a connection, because that's how you get to know people. By the time we have someone in an associate role, we start to train them on really taking over the financial modeling aspect of our client meeting. So we use eMoney as our financial modeling tool. And it is the expectation that our youngest advisors are going to become the ones that are the most technically competent in that tool. I actually run the eMoney team for my firm, so I'm currently in the process of building out the training for that. But there is a lot of responsibility and client-facing time that our youngest advisors actually get. So I guess in terms of day-to-day experience, there's also the minutia that happens every day in any advisory firm, things like trade forms, when clients need to move money around. Those are things that our associates are going to execute. Interns have to have a 65 to do it, so they might not end up being able to do it. But trade forms and reviewing allocations and reviewing financial plans and setting up meetings and taking notes and being in on meetings on business development so they can see how it happens. Those are all things that our interns and associates will do pretty much as soon as they start.
That's incredible to hear. I know, like, as a college student, I was always attracted to hearing firms say that when I was looking for a job. Like, I want to learn something in my internship that's going to be valuable. Even if I'm not going to the firm, I'll just say it. Like, you want to be doing real life work, because that's what's valuable. So that's great. I want to ask one more question just about Wipfli too in general. So is there a main focus of you guys? Like, you were talking about having the CPA backing. Is it you guys like tax heavy planning, or do you guys what's the philosophy as Wipfli Financial Advisors?
So I'm going to answer that in two pieces. We have an investment philosophy, and then there's sort of like a demographic that we work with, I think is the other piece of your question. The first part of that is our investment philosophy is sort of an indexed-based approach. We use something that's called factor models, if that is familiar to anybody, but Dimensional Fund Advisors is probably the best example of factor model funds in the US, at least. I'm not that familiar with the fund space outside of the US, so I can't speak to international, but if you have not heard of factor investing, go look up some white papers by Eugene Fama and you'll learn a thing or two. But essentially it's the idea that markets are efficient. At their core, they're efficient. So trying to time the market or pick specifically the best performing stocks in any given time period is probably going to be a loser's game. But there are certain factors that can be overlaid on top of an index that will over time create an outperformance premium. So there's 4 of these premiums, and if you read Fama's white paper, he'll tell you what they are. But so we actually use more of a Fama-based approach that is an index with an overlay of factors. We have a few other types of portfolios that follow the same general tilt, but have some different characteristics. So for example, ESG or SRI screens are something that we do. We use separately managed accounts, which means that we're managing our bond portfolio and our equity portfolio separately, and they are holding direct securities versus holding mutual funds. Most of our core portfolios are mutual fund based for efficiency reasons. So that's our investment philosophy, is we believe markets are efficient, and we believe that no one can time the markets perfectly, so it's not worth your money to try. Then in terms of what our demographic is for clients, because we are a CPA-based firm, we really focus on the same type of clients that our CPA affiliates focus on. And Wipfli goes to market as an industry-based firm. So we work with clients based on the type of industry their business is in. So we work with clients in real estate. We work with clients in things like mineral rights. We work with clients in technology. That's actually the space that I focus in, is technology and startups. We work with folks in manufacturing, distributions, farms. It's a very wide-ranging breadth of people. For reference, Wipfli CPA firm is actually about 3,000 people. So WFA is just a tiny little chunk of what Wipfli does. So we have a pretty deep bench in terms of expertise, and therefore our clients really come from a broader segment, I guess. But almost all of them are either business owners or were business owners who have exited their business. So that's the group that we focus on, is business owners and families from generally a privately held business type situation.
Thank you. That's fantastic. Yeah, it's great to hear working with small business owners. I myself hope to be in that same position, and yeah, trying to working with your neighbors, so to speak, for lack of a better term. But like that's
Right.
kind of what I want to do.
I wanted to work in a firm where I could work with the type of people that I know.
Yeah.
I did not want to have to be in a space where I would be the odd man out. I wanted to be able to have a conversation with somebody that I had something in common with. And that makes it a lot easier to connect with clients when my coworker Ryan is always saying, when he talks with clients, they're probably more interested in his thoughts on the most recent Badger football game than they are the market returns.
See,
So
yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Big Ten schools, yeah, there's always a lot to talk about, especially when football season's on. So
yeah, I know you guys are technically not Badger fans, but maybe we'll win you over someday.
Maybe someday. It'll be a hard win, but so switching gears a little bit, can you maybe tell us a little bit how the remote environment has affected you guys? Like, have there been any major changes? We're sitting here at the end of 2020, so any big changes over there?
Well, I have a home office now, which is a change for me. I did not before the pandemic hit, and I now do have a home office. I think one of the big things that has changed for our firm is we've actually changed a little bit of how our benefits work as a result of the remote environment. So, for example, there was a new tax provision that came out that basically said if employers want to, they can give $250 to their employees tax-free as a benefit, and the employees can use this to recoup some of the cost of having to have built out a home office because of the remote environment. And Wipfli was very quick to institute that, and everybody in the firm got that as an incentive because of the remote environment. So that was one of the aspects that we changed within our benefit structure. We also moved to flexible time off from PTO. So paid time off is literally a bank of a specific number of days that you can use to take vacation. And Wipfli decided after roughly in the middle of the pandemic, they decided that model didn't really make sense anymore. And it made more sense to go to something called flexible time off, which is basically, if you need to take off, you communicate with your team, let them know what your need is, you arrange your work, and then you go on about your day and take your time off. So there's no longer a limit to how much you can take off or a floor to how much you should take off. It's more about needs-based work management, which I think has been, I think the pandemic accelerated that trend. It's not necessarily that Wipfli wasn't already on the path to do that, but definitely has accelerated some of those trends. And then in terms of how my team works, I think that the remote environment has really affected how we operate only in a mechanical way. So we still meet with clients all the time. We're still touching base with our team members all the time. The thing that I miss that the remote environment has kind of cut out is we normally sit in this big open space and all of us are right across from each other. So if you have a question, you just like pop up and you ask the entire group what their thoughts are. And now that's much harder to do. So I miss that aspect of being in the office, and I look forward to being able to do that again. I can always still ask people one-off questions by phone or through messaging, but it doesn't feel the same. In terms of how we meet with clients, we just meet with clients over Zoom. And most of our clients have been able to accommodate that. Even our oldest clients now know how to use Zoom thanks to their grandkids. So that's been nice. But otherwise, I don't think there has been a lot of change. It's really just, it's been harder to maintain teams in a remote environment, not because the team structure breaks down, but because if you are really close to your team, kind of miss them after a while. So I'm looking forward to getting back in the office and seeing my team.
That's very fair. I know I had my internship this summer, and I'd met about half the team I worked on before the pandemic, fortunately. So I knew a few of them. But yeah, I worked from this exact seat my entire internship. You're seeing me here now. So it was it was sad, I'll say it, to not be able to see them and be able to have that experience. So I can definitely relate. Do you think that, so is Wipfli committed to going back to in person then? Do you think that that's something they would like to do when people felt comfortable, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think anybody in the financial services field who thinks that they can run a practice for individuals entirely remote, I think they are kidding themselves. There is a place for that, and there is a group of clients who is interested in that. However, there are always going to be clients who want to meet face to face, and that's completely understandable. Especially the discussion that we've been having at my team is if you are onboarding a new client, you're working with somebody who you've never met before and they've never met you, and you're trying to explain to them how your services will benefit them, how genuine does it seem face to face versus over the phone or a Zoom call? So there's always going to be a need for face-to-face contact between advisors and clients. That will always exist. It won't exist for all clients. It won't exist for all advisors all the time. But I will say that it's very unlikely that Wipfli would ever go to a fully remote environment. We do have a service line that is actually entirely remote, because we recognize that there's a client base that's the type of service they want. But I've been told multiple times by most of my clients that they cannot wait to see me in person because they miss seeing me in person, and I miss seeing them in person. So I don't think that Wipfli would ever pivot to a fully remote environment. I think we will see more flexibility in work arrangements. So maybe that means that as a Wipfli financial advisor, I might be in the office all day on Monday, and then I have all of my team meetings on Monday, and then I always work from home on Friday, and then Tuesday through Thursday is flexible. I might be in the office, I might be at home. I think we'll see more of that, but I don't think we'll ever get rid of having a Wipfli financial office space. I don't think we'll ever get rid of having in-person meetings. It's not the type of business that we have, because financial advising and advising in general, it's a relationship-based business. So anybody who thinks they can do it remotely 100%, I would challenge them on that, or they would be limiting their client pool pretty significantly.
That's very insightful and great to hear. Yeah, this is a people business. We're not evolved to speak on Zoom forever. We're not. We want to see each other.
Yep, exactly. It's not the same.
No, it's not. So, all of that being said, do you think that financial advising, like the CFP track, is still a good career for a college student, given everything we've all been through in 2020?
I think that the CFP track for financial advising is the only viable career track for somebody who wants to work with clients on managing assets. I think that if we look at the trends that have existed within the marketplace for the last 10 years and have probably accelerated over the last 3 or 4, the brokerage model is not profitable. Just from a sheer numbers standpoint, with the Secure Act, and now they're talking about a Secure Act 2.0, what the regulations have done to commissions for brokerage type models has made it pretty difficult for anybody who wants to give advice on securities to make money outside of a fiduciary space. And that's just a practical answer. So I would say that if there is somebody in college who's interested in advising clients on making investment decisions, the CFP track is almost exclusively the route to go. You could also get a CFA, but in some respects, that's maybe a little bit much. CFAs are really more designed for securities professionals who are going to be making institutional decisions or who are sitting on, for example, our investment committee. They're all CFAs. They're technical experts. They don't have the background or the training to work directly with retail consumers. That doesn't mean that a CFA can't do it. There's one senior advisor in my firm who does have a CFA, but really the CFP is going to be more beneficial for anybody who wants to work with clients on providing this type of advice. And I think it's probably table stakes for most RIAs. I would say that if you're thinking about going into the advisory business within an RIA and you are hesitant about whether or not you should get the CFP, I will say I don't think you will have a choice. The expectation, I think, for most RIAs is that any young advisor coming into their firm will qualify to sit the CFP and will pass the CFP. I came into this firm being qualified to sit the CPAs. I passed my CPAs in the first 6 months. And so I had a designation very, very quickly, but I still got my CFP because that is the expectation for RIAs.
So did the CPA, did that like fulfill the educational requirement for the CFP? How did that work exactly?
Yeah, so I sat the CFP in something called challenge status. So what that means is you can sit the CFP exam without having met all of the specific requirements for education, as long as you have one of another short list of designations. CPA is one of them, a Juris Doctorate for a lawyer is one of them. So my boss sat it in challenge status too, which was, it's not that common, even in my firm, for that to happen. So the fact that there's 2 of us on one team makes me feel pretty good. So I sat it in challenge status, but I still had to take a capstone course that was CFP certified in order to sit the CFP exam. So even though I had a CPA and could sit it in challenge status because of that, I couldn't actually qualify to sit the exam unless I had the CFP capstone. So I think that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. It's a question I like to ask too, because I know, like, me as an individual, I had never heard of the CFP before I got into Michigan State's campus. And I think that's the same for a lot of students. Like, people, at Michigan State, it's hooked up to their business college and a degree in finance. And a lot of people associate that with banking, investment banking, private equity, that kind of stuff. They don't even realize that there's this people side. So it's great to hear that there's different ways. And I want to make sure our listeners understand that we can't take it for granted. We're in a lucky position being in this program because
Yep.
a lot of people don't have that. We're in a very lucky position.
It is not that common to find a CFP qualified program. So if you have access to one in your college, it is incredibly important that you take advantage of it, because otherwise what happens when you go out into the marketplace to become a full-time employee is you become employed in an RIA that has the expectation that you'll sit the CFP, but you have not taken a capstone course that qualifies you for it. Then you have to take remedial courses somewhere else, usually online, to qualify to sit the CFP exam while you're working full-time, and then you have to study for the exam. It's not great. If you have access to it while you're in college, do it now, because it's a lot easier to do it now than it is to do it when you're working full-time with a book of business.
That's great advice. Yeah, I know. I'm planning on sitting for this exam as soon as I graduate, because it's like, why do I want to prolong studying? Just want to get it over with, get this exam done and then be worrying about the next licensing. So
exactly.
So, yeah. Do you have any advice, Leah, for any college students? Maybe I guess what I want to start with is like reading and things that they should be doing while they're in college. Or any blogs, any books, anything that they should be starting to read?
So they should start following Animal Spirits, which is a podcast with 2 people. Have you had one of them on your show yet?
We did. We had Ben Carlson on our show.
Ben Carlson. So
Episode
Animal
9,
Spirits,
if anybody's interested.
Animal Spirits is a podcast and also vlog that they publish some excerpts from their podcast on YouTube. But it is run by Ben Carlson and Michael Batnick, who are 2 guys from a firm called Ritholtz Wealth Management. And in addition to being, both of them, very, very smart, they're also very entertaining. So I think one of the beautiful things about that particular podcast is it's easily digestible for somebody who's not really heavily technical. And I will say that one of the issues that I have with financial podcasts in general is that they focus too much on the heavily technical aspects of our business, which if you are working with individual clients are never going to become relevant because you can't explain it to a client. The client doesn't know what you're saying and they have no interest in knowing what you're saying. And I think that Ben Carlson and Michael Batnick do a good job of really putting information out there that's useful and is digestible by most people. And I think they also have a perspective that takes into account that in our space, advisors work with normal people. They don't work with other advisors. They don't work with investment professionals. And we need to stop relying on our technical knowledge as our value proposition because we can't even explain it to somebody else. Like, how are you going to explain to somebody your value proposition when they aren't even at the level where they can understand what you're saying? So Animal Spirits is a great one. Masters of Business is a really great one as well. That's with Barry Ritholtz, and he has some really interesting guests. I love that one because they range in topics from everything from like a specific in-depth dive on a specific large company. For example, he might be talking to a CFO of Frito-Lay or something like that. Or he might be talking to a technical analyst about a specific point in market history where this weird thing happened, and they piece that together. So I think that Barry's podcast is also really, really good. I would probably start with those two, and then in terms of reading, I would read, there's a book that's called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. That is a very good read, and I think will be a good primer for people on how markets work. In terms of daily reading, I read the Wall Street Journal every day, which it's not because I think it's particularly insightful, but in our business, you need to at least know what's going on, and you need to get into the habit of doing that. So those would be my recommendations. I don't think that I have any others that would be particularly cogent. I read a lot of other stuff that's related to taxes. That would not be helpful for most other people.
So, no, I totally agree with that. Us MSU students, we get a free subscription to the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So if anybody does not have that, definitely sign up for those. Because, yeah, I'm the same way.
Start reading it.
Yeah, I read the journal every day, and I couldn't agree more. It's like a habit. It's just building the habit. So that's great to hear.
And you'll be surprised by how many of your clients also read the journal every day. Mm-hmm. And I think that is, especially as a young advisor, this is going to sound very odd, but as a young advisor, it is more important to read the Wall Street Journal every day than it is when you are an older advisor, because you'll be able to connect with older clients more readily because you've read the same thing they have. So, and they will take you a little bit more seriously when you can demonstrate that you are keeping up with things and you are an intelligent creature.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. I got a quick anecdote about that. My internship, I worked with a senior advisor, and he said that, he learned quickly. He was working with a client who would just shoot him random emails. What do you think about this story? And what do you think about that story? And he figured out that this guy was just picking the cover story of the Wall Street Journal and sending it to him. He was like, oh, what do you think about this? And every single time it was the big cover story on their website. And he's like, as soon as I learned that, it was the easiest thing in the world because I just regurgitated the article to him. And he's like, yep, that's what I think too. And they were on their merry way.
Yep.
So,
yeah.
That's fantastic. Are there any other skills you think that college students should be focusing on? So I guess like you could say the spectrum, us kids, or at least the way I think about it, is the technical versus the soft skill. You got to have both, but what do you think students should really be focusing on when they're coming out of college?
I think it depends on what part of the industry they want to be in. So as I had mentioned, our firm, we have the majority of the employees in our firm are front stage. They're actual advisors. They work directly with clients, whether that is in our retirement plan space, our institutional space, or our high net worth space. Most of us are advisors. However, that is not the only type of career that you can have in finance, and it's not the only type of career that you can have inside of an RIA. So I would say that if you're the type of person who really loves the nitty-gritty of technical analysis or fundamental analysis or something like that, you should really be focused more on building that technical skill base and looking for opportunities in an investment team or an operations team versus a front stage advisory position. Like I said, if what you really love about this particular area of business is the technical side, you probably are going to struggle with being an advisor because you're going to be trying to explain things to clients that they don't understand. And it's not even just that they don't understand them. To be quite honest, most clients don't care. What they want to know at the end of the day is if they're going to be okay. If they are going to have enough to retire, if they can make that gift to their grandkids, if they can put their kids through college, they don't want to know all the details of technical analysis. And if that is your bread and butter, if that is where you live and breathe, you should go into operations or you should go into investments. And there is a whole bunch of opportunities to do that. But you should be focusing on your technical skills if that is your goal. You should not be focusing on your soft skills. That being said, there are far fewer positions available in operations or investments. And so when it comes to looking at a career in investments, our firm is a great example. As I had said, our team is mostly advisors. Our investments team is 3 people of a firm of 90. So when you're talking about opportunity size, you are probably going to have fewer opportunities in operations or investments than you are in an advisor role. So if you are not very strongly technical, then you do need to work on your soft skills as soon as possible and as frequently as possible. I would say that the important soft skills to work on are pretty much just learning to listen. And this is something that I still struggle with is I think it's very easy to get very excited about telling somebody what you know, especially as a young advisor. You want to prove that you deserve to be in the room. So you're put in front of this client who's been working with a senior advisor for 10 years, and they bring you into this meeting, and you're like, ooh, I'm going to prove that I'm smart and I should be in this room. You have to resist that urge. Resist the urge to do that because it's not helping you. But that's part of the soft skills that you have to develop is understanding that your value is really in being able to listen to a client, understand what they're saying, read between the lines, and articulate value back to them. So if a client says to me, I'm really concerned about the markets, my soft skill set has told me, you hear, I'm really concerned about the markets, but look at their body language, look at their face. Is it the markets that they're concerned about, or is it that they're afraid they're going to run out of money, which are 2 completely different problems, right? So I think those are the soft skills that need to be developed as an advisor. And those are things that are surprisingly easy to develop if you start early. So if you are going in advisory track, look for opportunities to connect with people in an individual basis. That doesn't necessarily have to be an internship in advisory. It could also be volunteering. For example, our associate in Madison, she volunteered for a program called VITA, which prepares tax returns for low-income people. And so she developed really early on a good skill set of listening to people and understanding what their concerns are because she was helping them prepare tax returns. So there are a lot of opportunities like that that might not seem like they directly correlate. Customer service in general is a great experience for advisors, even though it's usually not that fun. But that type of experience will develop the soft skills that you need as an advisor. So that's my 2 cents. If you're going to go heavily technical, lean into it, but understand that an advisor needs to know technical, but that's not your value proposition. So you need to develop a different skill set because that's where you're going to be able to work with clients better. So
that's incredibly insightful. So well said. I think I've heard people say the best CFAs, you never want to put them in front of a client, and no offense to them, but exactly. And the best CFPs, your job is to interpret what the CFA is saying, right? That's what it is to the client. That's your whole value proposition.
Yeah, I would say that the best CFPs are the ones that can interpret what the CFAs are saying and interpret what the client's saying. Because it's always a 2-way street. Yep, it's always a 2-way street. It doesn't really matter if you can tell the client what the CFA is saying if you don't understand what the client needs or wants. and then articulate that back to the person who's building the portfolio. So yeah, it's definitely, communication skills is the single largest tool that we use in our business, and it will make or break a career. And I don't mean to sound dramatic, but it's the thing that's very, very hard to train. And when I go on campus, and because I'm part of our recruiting team too, when I'm on campus and I'm interviewing students, the first thing I always look for is I pay attention to how well they're listening to me versus how much they're talking. Because if they're talking a lot and they're not directly addressing the questions that I've asked them, it's telling me they're not listening at all. And that is almost always a disqualifier when it comes to hiring, because if you do not have the natural inclination to listen to what somebody is saying, it's very difficult for me to train that. If I find somebody who is an excellent listener but has no technical skill whatsoever, I can teach you the technical stuff. Like, that's not hard. Most of the people that we run into on college campuses are very smart. You guys are all really smart individuals. So the technical stuff is something you can learn pretty easily. It's the soft skills stuff that's really difficult. So when you are looking at interviewing for positions, keep that in mind, because every employer who's, at least for an RIA, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody who listens well. And I will bluntly say, I've had interviews where people have said, my greatest strength is communication, and then proceeded to explain basically the exact opposite. So when I say soft skills are important, just because you say that you have good communication skills doesn't mean that that's going to come across. You actually have to have them. And people who are recruiting for RIAs, they know what to look for. So that is my 2 cents. Is don't, just like in a client meeting, don't walk into an interview and start spouting technical stuff, because it's not going to help you unless you're interviewing for ops or investments. So
that is so insightful. I've had my boss this summer actually told me the exact same thing that you just said, that you don't have to have any technical skills. If you are a good listener, I can teach you anything. He said that to the entire internship base day one. And I like, that was very powerful. I know some of the firms on MSU's campus, they don't even recruit us finance majors. Now I'll say they're not as worried about people from CFP programs. They're kind of firms, but they go right to the communications department. They go and they get former athletes and people who have communications degrees, and they're like, we'll teach you all the finance skills. You just need to be able to talk to people. So
yep, my undergraduate degrees are in English and Spanish.
Yeah, I think it helps. I've heard, I think I said it, but you never want to put a CFA. You never want him writing the annual marketing email. That's another way to put it.
Yeah, you do not.
No. So Leah, this has been so great. What I like to end things with here is I just want to open the floor up to you. Is there maybe anything we didn't cover today, or anything you find valuable you'd want to say to any college students out there who are considering advising as a career?
I think that this is something that I've seen in my own practice, is if you're considering a career in advising, you don't necessarily have to love advising, but you have to be one of 2 things. You have to either be a very strong people person, which does not mean you have to be an extrovert. Most people don't believe me when I tell them I am not an extrovert. But you don't have to be an extrovert, but you do have to be a people person. Or if you are not a people person, you have to be incurably curious about almost everything. Because when you get into a meeting with a client, the thing that's going to differentiate you between other people, other advisors, other professionals, is how well you connect to that individual. And that is going to be determined by you genuinely caring about that person. So if you're a people person, that will come naturally to you. If you're not a people person, then being very curious is going to cause you to ask a bunch of questions about them as a person. And that's going to build that connection. So if that's not something that comes naturally to you, then it might be very difficult for you to be an advisor. And like I said, being a people person doesn't mean that you're an extrovert. I think on my team, we run the gamut of introvert to extrovert, and the most introverted person on my team is my boss, the principal who runs our office. So that goes to show you that you don't have to be an extrovert to be successful in this business. But he is incurably curious, like unbelievably so. And so am I. So I think that those are two traits that would serve people well in the advising space. And if you don't have them, you will have a very hard time, because clients will have a hard time connecting to you, and they might find you disingenuous. And that's the death knell of relationships. Like, you have to care about your clients. And there's no way to fake that. You just have to actually care about them. So that's been my experience. And I think if you can manage that, you'll be just fine.
That's so great to hear. I want to leave it with this, because I heard this. I am a naturally curious person, but something that always helped me was every single person you meet, no matter what their IQ is, no matter what their diplomas are, they know things that you don't know. And if you take the time to talk to them, you can learn all of the fun things and interesting things that they know that you don't. So that's so powerful.
Yep, absolutely. I had a neighbor who lived across the street from me. I had talked to him a few times since I had moved there. And one day he came over to my driveway, and he started telling me about the fact that he used to work in the popsicle stick industry, which I did not realize was a whole industry. But he had this huge depth of knowledge about geopolitical stuff because he worked in popsicle sticks. And that goes to show you that you never really know what a person does or thinks or knows based on appearances or even the information you already know about them. If he had told me, I work in the popsicle stick industry, would I have understood from that statement that he could have a nuanced discussion of the geopolitical situation in Ecuador? But that's the type of stuff that you run into.
That is fantastic. Leah Schmid, thank you so much.
Happy to be here, as always.
Hello, everyone. This is Vincent Picillo, producer of the MSUwma podcast, where we are inspiring and educating the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed it, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and check out our social media at MSUwma and msuwma.com.